Brad had supported Donald Trump in 2024, in part because Trump promised to change all that by becoming the most pro-life farmer president you'd ever seen. Instead, new tariffs cut into Brad's potential export market, and the emerging war in Iran had sent gas and fertilizer prices surging by as much as 70%. He was losing thousands of dollars each month and falling behind on his feed bill until he made the call he had been dreading his whole career. He dialed up an auction house to arrange the Watson's family final dairy sale last month. Thoughts and prayers, Brad? I don't care. Farm bankruptcies across the country have risen by 46% in 2025 and 70% in 2026, as nearly as a third of the world's fertilizer exports were impacted by conflicts in the Strait of Hormuz. Wow. I hope you have the day you voted for, Brad. How's it feel, right? See, Brad, you're the reason that we're here as a country. You're the reason that we're not a great country. You, I'm going to guess because you live in the Bible Belt, you actually don't actually follow anything in the Bible unless it has to do with abortion and being gay, right? You went to the voting booth and voted for a rapist, a felon. You ignored officers that were beaten and took their own lives after January 6th. You ignored the women that Trump sexually assaulted. You ignored the victims of Epstein Island that he's protecting. They're eating the dogs and cats. Shithole countries. They're poisoning the blood of America. You ignored the racism, the misogyny, insulting women, calling them fat and ugly. And you said, let me quote it right here, he promised to be the most pro-farmer president you'd ever seen. And ironically, in 2017, Donald Trump started a trade war with China. And you and your other white trash farmers went out there and said, oh, socialism's evil. I can't vote for the Democrats because it's evil. But please, government, give me $25 billion to bail us out, even though you caused this. And then you voted for him in 20, and then you voted for him in 24 again. The man with 3 failed marriages. How pathetic do you have to be to cheat on every single wife and have 3 failed marriages? Who added $8.2 trillion to the debt, who has 6 bankruptcies, 2 bankrupted casinos. And you went out there and goes, well, he told me he's going to be the most pro-farmer guy, so I'm just going to take him at his word because I'm a dumbass and he's a white man. So, you know, let's just be real, Brad. You were never going to vote for the black woman. And you're finding out that racism has a cost. It's expensive, isn't it, Brad? How's it feel? How's it feel? In the last election, I'm a Christian, Brad. I actually care about other people, unlike you. You're a selfish prick. I voted for universal health care. I cared about the victims of school shootings. I voted for gun reform. I voted to raise minimum wage. I voted to tax rich people. I voted to get people out of student debt. I voted to help small businesses, knowing that my taxes would go up. You know why, Brad? Maybe you'll learn something here if you can get out of your bigotry and your misogyny for like 2 seconds. Because I loved my neighbor as thyself. But people like you get stuck in your right-wing echo chambers. And every 4 years, you ask yourselves this question, which is the biggest con in the history of politics. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? You know, Ronald Reagan, who said that trickle-down economics works. That's working out really great. He was such a genius, right? Yeah, not. Because you only vote for yourself, Brad. That's the problem. If you call yourself a Christian and you say, I believe the greatest commandment is to love thy neighbor as thyself, the only person that you vote for is yourself, which is why you're a selfish prick. And the last sentence in here, it's pretty ironic. Fraley had begun counseling farmers on how to emotionally endure the aftermath of an auction, suggesting potential hobbies or strategies for debt consolidation. Wow. What kind of counseling should the women get that Trump assaulted? Or the families that are remaining from the dead officers on January 6th? Or the victims of school violence like Columbine and Uvalde and Sandy Hook that you ignored? Or the women that are dying from sepsis because you took away their health care by voting for right-wing Supreme Court justices? What kind of counseling should the victims get of Epstein Island while the man you voted for is defending them right now by not releasing the Epstein files?
I I can't think of a better example that Trump supporters' racism, especially farmers, is costing them everything, is costing our country, our security. Yes, if you're a Trump supporter, your racism, you're voting to make sure Black people, gay people, brown people don't have nice things, is causing us to lose everything. Donald Trump on Fox News this week, in broad daylight, was cornered about the practice of Chinese nationalists from the China Communist Party purchasing farmland around 19 of our military bases, nearly 300,000 acres, for espionage purposes, for strategic planning, for intelligence gathering. Donald Trump said it's good for the American farmer. It drives up competition. It drives up the cost of that farmland, the value of that farmland. To have our enemies are so bad, we had to fucking sell TikTok. And yet, every administration, including Democratic administrations, have been allowing the sale of this farmland to take place. Why? Because all of the political donor base, the corporations, the biggest political wheelers and dealers, are all white men. And they own both parties. And they are benefiting from this. How does increasing the price of farmland help farmers? It doesn't. It helps people like J.D. Vance and his corporations. All of these entities coming in and buying up the farmland for other reasons. American farmers, you're being fucked over. So you keep voting your racist policies, people who support your racist policies. And just, fuck around and find out, because Donald Trump's not even hiding it anymore.
Voted for Donald Trump, and now they're losing everything. Let's talk about it. I want to tell you the story of Brian and Brad Watson, father and son, farmers in Pennsylvania. They voted for Donald Trump, and now they're losing everything. Their story was recently covered in an article in the New York Times titled "The Last Days of Butter Ridge." It's a lengthy piece, and I will put a link in the video description below if you'd like to read it yourself. I'm going to read just a part of this article, and then I have some comments I'd like to make. Now, I will tell you that this article is written in such a way as to make you feel sorry for Brian and Brad. You can feel for them however you like, but I will explain to you what I think of Brian and Brad when I'm done. Let me read just a little of this, and then I'll have some points to make. Brad Watson, 41, awoke without an alarm at 5:30 a.m., strapped on his headlamp, and headed to the barn. Cold air leaked through a small gap in the boards, and he stuffed a paper bag into the hole to block the wind. He knew every detail of the barn in the morning. Hay shifting beneath his boots, heat rising off the cows, the way the milking equipment froze against his hands. He walked through the stalls to greet each cow by name, and then stopped. It was Meg, a purebred cow, one of his best. She had flipped over her stall in the night and twisted in her chain, strangling to death. He knelt to touch her head and then kept walking toward the milking parlor. More than 90 other cows still needed to be milked, twice a day, every day. And that work never stopped for a weekend or a vacation or a dead cow or any other crisis during the winter in which his family dairy business was beginning to unravel. He guided the cows into the parlor one at a time, patting their flanks to help them stay calm. "Come on, girls, settle down," he said. He hooked each one up to a machine and watched the milk start to flow as he ran through the numbers again in his head. His milk check came every other week, and it never covered his bills. Feed, fuel, fertilizer, all had nearly doubled in recent months. Lately, he was losing several $100s each day. And without Meg, the math would be worse. Brad attached the next cow to the machine and texted his father, Brian Watson, 62. "I can't keep going like this," Brad told him. "I could make more by picking cans up off the road. I'm done." "Don't think you failed," Brian responded. "You're the last Watson milking." The Watsons had been dairy farming since before the Civil War. One of dozens of Watson farms that had spread across northern Pennsylvania over the generations, and then, like dairy farms everywhere, gradually disappeared. The number of dairy farms in the United States had fallen to fewer than 25,000, from a peak of nearly 700,000 in the 1970s. Milk prices had barely risen in half a century, held down by overproduction and a handful of large corporations that dominated the dairy market. The costs of running a family farm had skyrocketed by as much as 500%. Brad had supported Donald Trump in
This Trump supporter found out the hard way. The Watson family had been dairy farming since before the Civil War. Brad Watson supported Donald Trump in 2024 because Trump promised to be the most pro-farmer president you've ever had. Unfortunately for Brad, instead of getting a pro-farmer president, he got a pro-foreign government president. The war in Iran sent gas and fertilizer prices up 70%. Feed also doubled, and now Brad was losing several $100s a day. After losing his best purebred cow in an accident, he texted his father Brian, "I can't keep going like this. I could make more picking cans up off the road. I'm done." The average Pennsylvania family dairy farm was earning about $20 for every 100 pounds of milk. And now that same amount costs nearly $30 to produce. Literally paying to work. Brian replied to Brad, "Don't think you failed. You're the last Watson milking." I would say voting for the guy directly responsible for ruining your family's legacy is an epic fail. And Fafo and I, we love to see it. Brad dialed up an auction house and the ad read, "Farm is going dry. Every cow must go." With farmers struggling, Brad had believed that Trump might help them, and he appreciated the frustration in Trump's speeches about America's decline. His dad, Brian, was more cynical. He'd seen generations of politicians riding tractors and pandering to rural America as more farmers went under. And his son, Brad, fell for that oldest trick in the book. Now the Watson family farm is done. Another farm gone. And it's all thanks to Trump, the guy he voted for. Now the Watson family farm is going to be known as the Wuhan farm.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So according to the video that we all just watched, this farmer supported Trump and now is dealing with serious financial problem on his farm. As I'm listening to him explaining what happened, you can hear the frustration in his voice. He seems genuinely shocked by how much things have changed. What really caught my attention is when people started saying, "You didn't see these policies will affect you," and honestly, that's where the debate really starts. A lot of people support politicians because they believe certain promises will help their lives, their businesses, or their communities. But sometimes the outcome isn't what they expected. Now, whether you agree with this farmer or not, losing a farm is not a small thing. That is somebody's livelihood. That's a year of hard work, and that is something nobody wants to see happen. At the same time, a lot of people online are saying this is a lesson about paying attention to policies and not just campaign slogans. They are arguing that elections are really consequences, and eventually those consequences reach everyday people. Honestly, watching this video, I can see why emotions are running high. Some people feel sympathy for him, while others feel the situation was predictable from the start. But that's just my own reaction. What do you think? Do you feel sorry for this farmer, or do you think this is a consequence of the choices he made? Let me know in the comment section. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow for more trendy discussion. See you in my next one. Thanks. Bye.